Hey, welcome everyone again to the Learning to Birth webinar series. My name is Akasha, and this is where we get up close and personal and intimate with the world's most inspiring thought leaders on birth and pregnancy. And today we have with us Jenny Braxton. Welcome, Jenny.
Thank you so much for having me here. I am really excited to talk with you about this.
Yeah, okay, look everyone, today is going to be really juicy. And you got no idea yet how juicy that we're just all going to be juiced up. So Jenny is a sexuality and empowerment coach at the School of Pussy-Centered Living. Woo.
Woo!
Do you want to tell us about like your story and how you got, to be all pussy-centered?
I would love to tell you the story. Well, and appropriately, the story starts with my pussy. It starts with, it really starts with me. It really starts with me having my own 3 children, although, the first 2 were born a couple years apart. The third one didn't come till quite a few years later. But with the birth of my first 2 children, basically helped me realize how disconnected I was from my pussy. They were beautiful, amazing births. I had them at home. But it really that transition into mamahood for me was like really crazy. It totally put me into like my fight or flight cycles for, the next several years. And then it was after my daughter, my second one, was born that someone actually gifted me the book Wild Feminine by Tammy Lynn Kent. If you haven't heard of that book, it's amazing. She also has an amazing book about mothering called Mothering from Your Center. Anyway, little tangent there. Yeah, definitely write them down. They're really wonderful books. She's really wonderful. And actually reading that book was my first, bringing my awareness to the fact that oh my goodness, I am disconnected. I thought I was this hip home birthing mama, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so disconnected. I wouldn't even say the word pussy then. I even realized I had so much shame around just saying the word vagina. So that really took me into this, that started my journey. And then when my third was born, which was 6 years later, that was a really amazing experience of birth in which I truly learned to surrender. I realized that in my prior 2 births, I hadn't fully surrendered. I had still been holding on to control. With his birth, I fully surrendered. And then, some other things unfolded. But it basically, I really wanted to write a blog, put me on this journey of I want to help women connect to their feminine beings. I'm going to start a blog. And that very quickly turned into me starting a coaching practice, helping women prepare for birth. And so I was in that world, helping women prepare for, empowered, beautiful births. And then I got really interested in ecstatic birth, which, full disclosure, my births were, I would definitely describe them as ecstatic on a spiritual and emotional level. They were not physically ecstatic. In fact, at the time, I would be orgasmic birth, I don't know if that's really a thing. However, I started taking this ecstatic birth practitioner course just to help me in my work with women. And through that course, what I really ended up doing was rebirthing myself into an ecstatic, pussy-centered woman. And so then as I went along in that journey, I realized that although I love working with women around birth and mothering, and I love supporting them in that way, I really wanted to expand what I was doing with women to include all of our sexuality, because we can get into this a little bit, but birth is part of our sexuality. It's not separate from it. Yeah, so this kind of all was kept unfolding, and then I just had this phrase going through my head, which was pussy-centered living. And at the time, I was calling my business Sacred Birth, Conscious Mama, and I had this Facebook group of over 1,000 women, Sacred Birth, Conscious Mama, so beautiful. And then I was like, I'm going to change it to pussy-centered living, and I did it, and that was my public coming out as a pussy-centered woman.
You go for it. That's an awesome story, because birth is sexuality. We've got to reclaim it. That's what it actually is. It is our pussies. It is a baby, either being belly birthed, yes, or it got through in there generally through our pussy, and that's gonna be hopefully it will come out, if so that's where it's all at. And the thing is that we hide our pussy all the time. Obviously we don't always take Instagram posts and stuff of it and Facebook pictures, but it's not our profile picture, our pussy, although Jermaine Greer did go there at one point. But it's beautiful now in the last few years to see how many birth videos and pictures of real mamas birthing, real vaginas flowering, opening, blooming around their babies' heads are out there now, and women are getting comfortable with this is just another part of their body. It's like my eye or my hand. It's just another part of my body, and it's mine, and I'm reclaiming it, and it's beautiful, and my sexuality is who I am, and my birthing is me. It's just beautiful. Yeah,
it really is. It really is.
What is pussy-centered living? Like, how do we do it? How do we get there?
Yeah, so pussy-centered living, I always say, like, pussy, obviously it's like a physical place on our body, but it's more than that. She's more than that. I say that she's really like the feminine divinity grounded in the female body. So she's really our center of, our deepest intuition, our deepest inner knowing, our inner wisdom, all of these pieces that are extremely essential for birth. And she's this place where we can connect to our inner pleasure and our abundance. And so living a pussy-centered life doesn't mean that we're necessarily like, going around having sex all the time. Although if that's your thing, that's awesome.
I'm up for that.
Right? But it just really means it's being grounded in the truth of who we are, because for generations, for centuries, we have been essentially taught that to be a woman and to own a pussy is shameful and it's bad and it's less than and it's weak. And so that's caused this like huge disconnection for women in a collective way. And so when we're not living pussy-centered lives, when we're not connected to the internal source of our energy and our joy and our pleasure, we're feeling really stressed a lot. We get stuck in our heads. We have births that are disempowering, disappointing, even traumatic. We mother from a place of like where we're giving, but it's giving in this way that depletes us and exhausts us. Whereas when we're living pussy-centered, living by our truth of who we really are as women, there's infinite potential for rejuvenation, and we're living true to our cyclical nature, and it's just this beautiful, nourishing and sustainable and like highly pleasurable and amazing place to live from.
Yeah, I can certainly attest to that. It's a big change. What changed it, where I started on this transition for myself was having lived my life a lot in those male models of shame around myself and who I was, and even the things I'd been through, which weren't my story. Those are the stories other people gave to me and forced on me, and they weren't me and my story. And my journey in preparing for my second birth was, I guess you could call it journaling, but really I kind of wrote letters to myself. And those letters were just like all the stories of things that had happened to me, and forgiving myself, because I realized that I had to look at them and forgive myself and realize there was no shame in them. Because if there was shame, I wouldn't be able to reclaim, that center of my sexuality. And we shouldn't feel any shame around any part of our body for any reason. It's our power center,
Yeah, definitely. That's beautiful. I love that story.
Rejoice in it. Now, I guess okay, it's easy on one hand to say, let's all live from our pussy centers, but it's a bit of work to get there. Sometimes, if a woman comes to you and goes, I just want to reclaim my pussy power, where do you start with her?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would love it if people came to me and said that. Generally,
you want to reclaim your pussy power, you do that now. You go talk to Jenny and Jenny will sort you out.
Yeah, definitely come to me with those words. Because like you said, this is hard, and we have so many stories around this, so much shame, so much guilt. Women come to me much more tentative. It takes like a lot of courage for women to even like approach this and come to me. But really the first thing that we do is we like literally connect with her. And that can be done in several ways. One way that I love is to just like literally start just like closing your eyes and like literally feeling the sensation in your pussy, just like connecting with her on this feeling energetic level, like feeling her, because with so many women have varying degrees of just like numbness, and we're so used to like not feeling there, that it's not okay to put our attention on our pussy. And so many women don't have a lot of sensation. The beautiful thing is the more you put your attention on her, you know, I say pussies love attention. The more you put your attention on her, this really just like blossoms and the connection really strengthens. And then, you know, I with that practice, then I really invite women to start to listen to what I call their pussy voice. And, you know, this may come as an actual voice that women hear in their heads. It might just be, you know, images they get or sensations or feelings. But to really just start listening into that place in your body, because like I said, that is like where our deepest intuition and inner guidance comes from. And so when we can really start listening to her, she will actually guide us on our journey. Like she'll let us know what we have to do in order to reconnect. And then of course, there's all sorts of different actual physical and body practices that I share as well to connect with her on that physical level. And of course, throughout all of this, there is a lot of clearing of old stories, just like you did with your beautiful journaling letter writing practice. We have so many stories, and I call these false stories. And yeah, stories of shame, guilt, trauma, you know, so much stuff in there. So as this reconnection process begins, you know, these stories come up, and it doesn't have to be this like scary dive right into the most horrible traumatic things that have ever happened to us. You know, we can take it at the pace that feels right for us, and we can do it in a way that feels good and feels joyful. And as we're ready for the deeper layers, you know, we'll get there. I mean, just my own journey, when I look back over my pussy-centered journey, there have been so many layers, and I always get to this place where I'm like, oh, I'm so connected, I'm so good. And then, you know, something happens and a new layer is revealed, and I'm able to like dive even deeper into this connection. So it's like, no matter where you are in the journey, you can always go deeper.
You can. And that's so interesting, because it's so true. Like we tend to put our attention, like, because you can put your attention in your body anywhere you choose, like you can do a body scan, right? But we do tend to put our attention kind of from our waist up. And that means that we're not even really feeling our feet and our legs most of the time. And it's really interesting, because I noticed if I put my attention on my pussy, right, the things like my chest and my throat even feel entirely different. You know, if a woman's putting attention on her pussy and things come up for her, like how do you help her? What do you recommend for her? Because, you know, maybe stuff is going to start to flow, you know, things are going to remember stuff or feel things maybe she hasn't for a long time.
Definitely. So one of my favorite practices, you know, it's really essential to stay connected to our body during this practice. You know, when things get, you know, a little bit deep, or we're starting to uncover some maybe more traumatic things, you know, we have this tendency to like disassociate. So what I say is it's really important to stay connected to the actual feelings in our body, to notice where we're feeling constriction or tightness, to breathe into those places, to consciously release them. And then, you know, just like expressing what you're feeling is really essential, you know, like you did, whether that's through writing. I'm also a big fan of finding other women that you can talk about with this, whether that be someone like me, like a coach, or whether that just be some girlfriends. But that's actually another reason why my favorite format is to work in this school format, not just one-on-one. I mean, one-on-one is great, but it's like when women are in community with each other, speaking about things, I mean, just speaking about this and realizing like, oh my gosh, you have had a similar thing, like you've experienced this before. It's amazing how much that can clear just by that. And then of course, there's actually practices you can do, actual pleasure practices that you can do to help release the stories. One of my favorite practices that is also one of the favorites of my students is something that I call raging. And oh yeah, it's good.
I kind of get raging when my teenage son leaves socks everywhere. He even puts dirty socks behind my pillows. I don't know how. He'll just like land and take his socks off, and then I'm raging. But I don't think this is what you're talking about.
Yeah, raging. This type of raging shouldn't actually be done at another person. Like,
my bad. Sorry.
No.
real person here.
No. I trust me. I've also been in those situations where I have raged at my children. I'm like, okay, that's not how I want to do this. Like, let me go attend to myself here. But no, raging is essentially, going back just one step here of asking how we can release these. It's like really essential that we can feel the feelings that are coming up for us.
Yeah.
So raging is this practice where if we're feeling anger around this, or we're feeling grief or sadness or shame or whatever it is, actually like expressing it through our bodies actually releases it, because all of these emotions, all of these limiting stories, these past experiences that have happened to us, they have physical manifestations in our body. And so somatically, we can release that by moving our body. So the practice of raging can look a million different ways. It can look different for any person, every person. But essentially the important components is that you're really like moving your body and you're like expressing that rage or grief or like whatever it is you're feeling. So like one really accessible way for people to do this is to maybe like turn on some music that like really kind of embodies that way that they're feeling, and to just like, and it's not necessarily dancing, you're just like moving, and like it can be really crazy. Sometimes I'll actually just like hit pillows or like have a tantrum like a little kid, like pound my fists and kick my feet. Or sometimes I'll just like kind of, I don't actually like to scream. Some people like to scream or yell, but that kind of hurts my throat. So I'll do this like kind of like silent scream where I'm just like, and it's really just like allowing myself to feel those deep feelings, to express it and to move it out. And that is like, it's definitely my go-to practice for releasing these like deep limiting stories.
Beautiful. That's fantastic. All right. We're all, I was just noticing this morning, like something came up and I felt a bit sad about it. And I noticed kind of almost like, and I spent a lot of time now paying attention. It's like, I didn't want to express that sadness. It was like, no, just keep it in context. It's not that bad. You'll go on. But I noticed that my thoughts were then like, well, how can I punish this person who's done this? Blah, blah, blah. And then I was like, what if I just cry?
Yeah.
I'm sad about this. I don't blame the other person. They've got to do their own stuff. They've got to let it. They've got their life to live. It's not their fault, not my problem. And I'm just sad. What if I just cry? And it just, you can do it. And I guess that's kind of like what you're talking about, just acknowledging stuff as it comes up, not letting it go into tension in our bodies, and just letting it go.
Exactly. I love that story. Yeah. And it's so true, because when we allow ourselves to express those emotions, they move through us. Like that's what emotions are meant to be. They're energy in motion. And so when we express them, we feel them, we express them, we let them go. But when we suppress them, that's when they become honestly like toxic within us. Just like you said, you started having all of these thoughts that were
toxic thoughts. I had them for all of 5 seconds. I was like, no, I'm not going down there. Thank you. I'm not interested. So pussy-centered living when it comes to pregnancy and birth, how do we do that?
Yeah, well, honestly, I think it's very essential for pregnancy and birth. I think we should go back just a little bit to the whole like sex is part of our, sex is part of our sexuality.
Sex is often kind of part of being pregnant as well. Not all the time. Generally, at least, when it's accidental, there's generally sex involved.
Yeah. Well, even if sex isn't the way the baby got in, still birth is part of our sexuality. Sex and birth are not two separate things, but they're really like 2 points on the same continuum. One is the way that the baby came in, and the other is the way that the baby comes out. And so, to be honest, I think that is like a huge reason why the culture of birth looks like it does, with many women having these disempowering births or numbed out births, or however it may look, traumatic births, because we are so disconnected to our pussies, and we're so disconnected from that wisdom and from feeling her. And when we're disconnected from her, we can't tap into the pleasure. And we have deep cultural stories that tell us that birth is meant to be painful, right? That it's our punishment because Eve ate the apple in Eden, and so we've been punished with painful childbirth. Like, this is a deep cultural story, and then it's just reiterated by all the experiences women have, by what doctors and hospitals, I'm talking general terms obviously here, But you know, so much of what women are taught is that like, okay, your body can't actually handle this. You need to give the power away. Like, you know, this is going to be too painful, too difficult, too dangerous. Like, you can't actually handle this. So like, of course. But when we live pussy centered and when we live really connected to our sexuality and we're doing the work of letting go of those limiting stories and we're really expanding into our pleasure and our sensation and our feelings, then that opens the way for us to have a birth that actually is pleasurable. And I do actually mean on the physical level as well. Like, not necessarily every ecstatic birth has to feel physically pleasurable, but I think it's really important that women know that that's not just like some like random thing that maybe just a few handfuls of lucky women maybe experience. Like, it's a real thing. And if you want to have an ecstatic birth and you really prepare for it and really do the work around it, you're going to have an amazing experience no matter how it unfolds. Like, I'd also just like to say real fast that ecstatic birth doesn't mean that you're necessarily doing it all natural. It doesn't mean it's going to be a home birth. Like, you can even have an ecstatic C-section. You know, it's not about how the birth looks. It's really about how the woman feels. And that's that she is, you know, I don't want to say in control, because you don't really want to be in control in birth, but like autonomous in her decisions and empowered in the experience that's happening.
You've actually brought up something really, really important there. And I haven't really discussed that with anyone else here on this webinar series, but it's coming up now. And I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are, because please apologize if I'm coming a bit left of field here. So sexuality as women understand it, and I guess as our magazines teach us and everything else, and you know, it is in our pussies and our clitoris, and you know, so we know about clitoral orgasms, we know probably about cervical orgasms, uterine orgasms, we know about orgasms in that general area. But you know, when we're talking about ecstatic birth and people are going, oh my God, how can I be orgasming there? You know, it is your womb. You know, as I'm giving birth, it's everything stretching, it's going to be so painful. But the thing is that, and I haven't really seen this taught anywhere, but you probably know all about it, is that you don't have to just orgasm down there. You can orgasm in your spine. You can orgasm here. I've orgasmed in my nose. I do have a big nose. I think that's why I've been able to orgasm there. I orgasmed in my heart. I've orgasmed like anywhere that you can imagine. I've orgasmed, and I know, like, that was actually my first experience. It was my second birth. I knew nothing about Kundalini, knew nothing, but I'd done a lot to become pussy-centered. And my second birth, like, I was going through a lot down there, but my spine was orgasming, right? And I didn't know anything about Kundalini, never heard anything about it, but I suddenly knew, though, that there was something different about life that no one had ever taught me before. I'd never heard before. So, you know, there's all these ways that you can have an ecstatic birth and you can be opened up to that. But I guess it comes to the pussy first.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's an incredible story. I love that so much. And you know, when women are like, oh my gosh, like, how could that ever be pleasurable? Like, how could you ever have an orgasm with something as painful as birth? You know, the way that I first heard it that really clicked for me, and I was just like, oh yeah, of course, was to think about sex, right? And probably I would venture to say all of us have had sexual experiences that didn't feel good, you know, that like didn't feel good, that were maybe even really painful, that were maybe scary. We have had those experiences. And then hopefully all of us have also had experiences with sex that are just like mind-blowingly expansive, just like so incredible, right?
My toes are curling right now.
Yeah. And so that's the same with birth. Like, unfortunately, right now, most women are at the spectrum where they're experiencing it as this painful thing, but it's all the same body parts, all the same hormones, all the same pathways in your body in sex as in birth. So if you can have mind-blowingly orgasmic sexual experiences, you can also have mind-blowingly orgasmic birth experiences. And like I said, my births were not ecstatic in that physical way, but from the women who I have heard from who have had physically ecstatic birth, the orgasm you can have in birth far surpasses what you could have otherwise. Because I mean, what is bigger than birth? Like nothing. Like the amount of energy that is coming through you in birth is like insurpassable, right? You're bringing new life into the world. And so you know, that's what it really is about with this ecstatic birth, is like, is opening yourself up to be able to like receive and open to that energy, instead of like, it's the constricting and the tightening and the fear that comes up that causes the pain.
Yeah, yeah, and it's about transcending our story, hey, and transcending the fear, and just going, I'm bigger than that. What's my body capable of? Who am I? What am I capable of? And honoring your right to own your pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
It's amazing. And well, we've been talking a lot about like kind of what can happen in birth, I guess. Do you want to talk about maybe like sex after birth, or no, not even sex, like just sexuality and being pussy centered after birth? Like, how does that happen? Because, you know, obviously our pussies have gone through a little bit of change, and maybe experiencing all sorts of things postpartum. How do we stay pussy centered through all of that, you know, going on down there?
Yeah, definitely. I know it's a huge transition. And you know, just to speak, obviously it is bigger than just sex, but just to speak to that sex part for a second, because I think that this is a topic that isn't talked about enough, like postpartum sex. And you know, for me, when I had my, let's go there just for a second, and then we'll talk about it in the bigger sense as well. But you know, for me, after I had my first child, which was an unexpected pregnancy, I was pretty young, like I didn't know anything about birth at that point. I started reading books when I was pregnant, but anyway, and so my midwives told me like, okay, well, you have to wait 6 weeks postpartum until you can have sex. And I was like, great. Okay. In my mind, I'm like, great, 6 weeks postpartum, like I'll be ready to go. Awesome. And so I was really taken aback to experience, you know, I had excruciatingly painful sex for the first 7 months after giving birth. And I had a beautiful birth, like no tearing, no nothing. But like, that's how long my body took to heal. And nobody told me that. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like, am I never going to be able to have sex again? Like, is this ever going to feel good again? Like, is this just how it is? So I think it's really like, I am excited for the day when it is like routine postpartum care for all women to be seen by a women's health therapist, or like a physical therapist who specializes in women's health. And by that, I mean really the pelvic bowl, someone who does internal massage. Because even if you don't have, you know, acute symptoms, or even if you don't have that painful of sex, just carrying, you know, being pregnant, carrying a baby and giving birth, it changes stuff so much down there. And our pelvic floor is the base and the core of our entire body. And so things that are slightly out of balance in our pelvic core, it's gonna like reverberate through our whole body and cause like really big things. So I think that that's really essential. And you can also do, you know, I actually also teach women how to do internal pussy massage for themselves, which is also like a great self-care tool. And just to say, for that, you know, for either the professional or doing it yourself, you should wait the 6 weeks postpartum before doing that, just to let the, you know, that acute trauma is the word that's coming to, I mean, physical trauma, like even a perfect, great ecstatic birth, like there's going to be physical trauma to your body. It's just, giving birth is an intense thing.
If anyone's actually interested in that, you'll be probably really excited, Jenny. A lady named Lynn Schulte from Colorado. She's actually on this series, and she's a postpartum bodywork healer. So, and that's actually her mission, is to make sure everyone in the world gets to see someone postpartum and have that kind of physical therapy. So yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's amazing. Well, then I will leave it at that. I bet she's going to speak amazingly to that subject. So I can't wait to listen to her talk about that. But, you know, just to like take it into the kind of expand that a little bit, and just like living pussy centered, and how does that living pussy centered translate to being a mother? You know, living pussy centered is really about knowing how to tap into our needs and our desires and like take care of ourselves. And I don't mean by like, you know, taking a day at the spa, that's lovely too, but like really in those deeply nourishing, sustainable ways, which is essential for mothers, right? Like we're so, like motherhood can throw things upside down, topsy-turvy so much that like what's the first thing to go is like listening to our needs, listening to our desires, listening to our bodies, like listening to what we need to like feel good. That so often just goes out the window. And so then we end up having this experience that's like it's just not as pleasurable as it could be. We don't feel as good. We're stressed. Like, you know, that affects the relationship with our partners. And that certainly affects the relationship with our children as well, because our children are like energetic extensions of us, and everything that we feel, they feel. And, you know, one, just to kind of throw in here, one really awesome thing that a lot of the women experience who I work with who are mothers, that just by work, you know, there's this thing for mothers, right? Like, well, how can I put myself first? Like, I have children, I have to take care of them. And when a woman really does attend to her needs, attend to her pleasure, follow that guidance of her pussy, like her children just become happier and calmer without her doing anything like specifically with them, because we just like feed off of her energy. So, you know, it's just this beautiful thing of like, we really are energetic centers, and attending to our energy and the way we feel positively affects everybody around us. So, you know, mothers certainly need to be pussy centered, or not, you know, need to be, everyone's on a journey, but you know, I love working with mothers for that reason, because then when these mothers are really attending to that, you know, doing the work, letting go of their stories, their shame, their guilt, then the children don't have that passed down to them. You know, all of our unprocessed stuff, baggage, if we don't work through that, we're just going to pass it on to our children. And that was honestly another thing that really helped me see that I still had some really deep layers of shame around my pussy, was as my daughter got older, I realized that I was having a hard time talking to her about her body, about her pussy, that I was like forcing myself, but there was this level of discomfort within me. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, where is that coming from? You know, because these things, they really do get passed down. And so when we can clear that, we're like clearing it for all the generations to come, and honestly, all the ancestral lineages behind us as well. Powerful work being a pussy-centered woman.
It is. I mean, it's powerful words that you've just said, you know, because we do clear it. And I think that if we do release that energy in ourselves and live from there, then, you know, the bonds of our family, you know, it's oxytocin, you know, it's love, you know, it all starts to flow again. Now there's, you know, obviously a lot of us are going to be giving birth in hospital. That's just the reality. That means or even at home, but that means there's going to be caregivers around us who aren't, you know, us and our body, or our intimate, you know, close family. What can caregivers from maybe the medical framework do to kind of, I don't know, kind of recenter themselves around the concept of, you know, birth as sexuality? Because I mean, I don't think that's how they see themselves. They see themselves as medical practitioners, not sexuality kind of facilitators. So yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I think for the medical provider to change in that way, they have to be just like very open. It has to come from within. And you know, if you are a pregnant mother going to be giving birth in a hospital, and you know that you want to have a, you know, an ecstatic birth experience, it can certainly happen, and it's going to take some planning and some forethought, and to be really, really strong in what you want. You know, one of the things that's so amazing about being pussy centered is we're, you know, the pussy and the throat are actually connected, as us in the birth world know. You know, relax your throat and your jaw, you're going to give birth more easily.
Lots of line poses during pregnancy yoga. I remember going, you know, like preparing for active birth, So.
Totally. And what that also means for pussy-centered women is it actually gives us strength to be strong in our voices and speaking what we need and speaking what we desire. So for a woman who wants to have in, you know, this ecstatic pussy-centered type birth in a hospital, I highly recommend she has a team of support around her who is aligned with her desires. More so than just her partner, because you know, the partner needs to be there. He or she, you know, they've got other work to do besides like kind of keeping the others at bay. But you know, like hiring a doula, and just because a woman is a doula or a birth worker, you know, doesn't necessarily mean she's going to feel comfortable with the sexual side of birth. So if that's something you really desire, it's really essential to be very open with your caregivers about what you want. Not necessarily saying that I want to have an orgasmic birth, but just being like, I'm going to need to have privacy. I want to be left alone. And if you do feel comfortable, like saying like, yeah, I do want to have an ecstatic birth. I do want to include my sexuality in this. And I want to have the freedom to be able to be kissing with my partner, to be able to be self-pleasuring myself, which are all really powerful tools that you can use. And so if you're in a hospital setting, you know, I know people have had people like put signs up outside the hospital door and have someone be there, like really strict, like you cannot just come barging in here, you have to knock, you can't just come walking in. You know, you can do things to create the environment to give you more privacy. You know, maybe, you know, a lot of some hospital rooms or in your house even, you know, maybe just going into the bathroom. Like if you are, you know, let's say you're even at home or in the hospital and you do have people there that you don't necessarily feel as open and comfortable with, like having a place like going to the bathroom, being in a shower or a tub where you can have some privacy and get in touch with yourself in that way is a really powerful tool. But, you know, if you are really want to have a birth like this, I would highly recommend you have very, very strong boundaries. And if there is somebody who wants to be at your birth, even if it's your mother or your mother-in-law, and you know that you are not going to be comfortable going there with them present, put up your boundaries, use your voice, and just be like, I would love for you to come as soon as that baby is born.
Yeah.
But I need to birth. I need to birth my own way.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I totally resonate with that. I've always sort of seen birth as a sexual thing. I mean, at my first birth, I had my partner there, you know, kissing me and everything. I think we had a doula who'd, you know, had explained that, you know, like kissing, oxytocin makes birth go faster. All right, we'll do that. But my second birth, you know, I was alone. I had a friend there, but I was in a hospital. And I think I'd watched Orgasmic Birth by then, right? And I was just like, I'm just hopping in that pool. And these are doctors and nurses. I'm just going to touch myself. And if they can't cope with it, they can just walk out of the room, you know, just, you know, I mean, like they're going to see my bum anyway. They're going to see the baby come out. My hand is going to be down there anyway as the baby's head comes out. So I probably, you know, stimulated my clitoris there in the birthing pool. You can do it. Just, you know, if they don't like it, they can leave.
That's amazing. I love that so very much. I love that. But, you know, I mean, obviously
doctors and nurses have seen everything. Come on, you know.
Yeah.
They're going to see me poo in a second, you know, as we go through transitions. Just.
Oh, I love that so very much. And for people who aren't maybe as like comfortable in that as you are, you know, it is important that we be strong and like speak our needs and desires and create those boundaries so that we can feel free and comfortable to birth how we desire.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's been so beautiful talking, connecting with you, Jenny. I think every woman has a lot to gain if they want to come and join your program and get pussy centered with you, because it will change your life. You won't even know yourself afterwards. Once you unleash that power and you live from there, you're just not going to know yourself afterwards. You're going to be like everything that you ever dreamed that you could be and would be, like that person that you knew that you do stuff and you go, why did I do that? Why did I do that? And then suddenly you unleash that and you're like, yeah, that's the person I knew I was supposed to be. Like that's what can happen through it. How do people like follow you online and come and like do your course and everything?
Yeah, do come follow me online and do my course. So I'm actually most easily found right now on Facebook, either just at Jenny Braxton, my personal page, or also the School of Pussy Centered Living. I also have a Facebook group called Pussy Centered Living. So if you look up any of that, you will find me. And let's see here, this webinar, by the time this webinar is going out, the School of Pussy Centered Living will be in session, the last session for 2019, and I will be starting up again probably towards the end of January. I haven't gotten that early 2020, you know, scheduled in yet. But definitely like reach out, get in contact with me if you're listening to this and you want to know more. Please let me know. I love hearing from women. And also I am available for one-on-one coaching, and I am an ecstatic birth practitioner, my official title. And so if any woman is interested in learning more about how she can have an ecstatic birth, you know, going deeper on these practices to connect with her sexuality in preparation for birth, reach out to me, message me, connect with me on Facebook. Let me know that you listen to me here talking on this webinar, and I would love to do a complimentary call, chat one-on-one with you and give you some pointers and get you started on the journey.
Fantastic. That's just so beautiful. Thank you, Jenny. Look, we'll wrap it up. I'm going to ask one more question though, and you can just answer however you like what will the world look like when every woman is living pussy-centered?
Oh my goodness. I love that you asked this question, because I jokingly but not jokingly tell my students that, like, this is why I'm doing this, because pussy-centered women are going to take over the world, and we're going to put everything that's wrong, we're going to put it right.
Yeah.
You know, like when every woman is pussy-centered, like all of the like political issues, environmental issues, like all of that will disappear. Like children will always, all women are going to have these amazing empowered birth experiences. Children will know how loved they are. We'll have generations growing up with all the baggage that we have had to grow up with. You know, people are going to be having amazing orgasms. Everyone's going to be having these nose orgasms and chest orgasms. You know, it's just
and if anyone wants coaching with me on how to have a nose orgasm, just reach out one-on-one. We'll do it. Not sure really how to teach that, but I will work it out if you need to know.
You know, but like seriously, like really what this like pussy-centered woman is, it's the rise of the feminine, right? It's the rise of this like collaborative, healing, just like amazing energy, which is what the world needs. It's like taking all of these systems that are, you know, violent and destructive, and like turning them into things that are truly sustainable and truly work for the good of all. Like that is the power of the feminine. And as this feminine power rises, you know, it brings the masculine into balance, so that the masculine, instead of being this, you know, patriarchal kind of destructive force, becomes this incredible, beautiful structure to hold this vibrant feminine energy, and everything is just like unicorns and rainbows.
That's right. Feminine energy is going to eat everything up and then transform and shoot it out, unicorns and rainbows. Yeah, I totally agree. And I totally agree that masculine strength, like constructive masculine strength, shows itself through softness and protection. The true masculines I know in my life are incredibly soft and considerate and protective and supportive. And that is the side of the true masculine, I feel. It's not this, you know, destructive, arrogant, just cruel, thoughtless force that, you know, people think that's what the masculine is and it must be suppressed. No, the masculine has to actually, the true masculine has to be unleashed. And we unleash it through being strong women, you know, loving others.
Absolutely. I mean, I have heard over and over again from my students and experiences in my own life that as we just do our inner work, as we become more and more pussy-centered, literally our men change, and they come into that beautiful, amazing, divine, masculine energy just by us. You know, it's like that feminine energy, when we embody it, it activates that divine masculine energy, and it's just incredible.
What if things are totally wrong? Like, what if things have been totally on their head and it's actually the woman that is the strong energy and that the man is the softness and flow? Who knows what is possible? We're going to see it though in the future, because there's going to be more and more women who are pussy-centered and are going to have that life like flowing through and around them. So thank you, Jenny, for being with us, sharing your vision and getting us a little bit pussy-centered for an hour. Let's all live like that. All right.
Definitely. Well, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak here. I'm just, I am on a mission. Like, yes, the more pussy-centered women, the better. So it's just so delightful to be here. And I thank you from the bottom of my pussy.
All right. Thank you, everyone. There's heaps more Learning to Birth webinars. Of course, you can check out that one with Lynn Schulte about like healing from the postpartum with bodywork. And you can follow us at Learn to Birth, Facebook, Instagram. Okay, bye. See you next time.